The modulation section on the Analogue Solutions Leipzig-S is absolutely out of control. It's extremely versatile, and it ends up with a tremendous amount of possibility due to the complexity of the routings. In general, you have 3 sources, 3 amounts of those sources, and then 3 destinations. As you can see, the first set of knobs has a variety of sources that go to VCO1. Second set of knobs has a variety of sources that goes to VCO2. And the third set of knobs has a variety of sources that goes to the filter. And all you have to decide is where you want to go with it. Here is the sound we're going to start with. Great analog synthesizer sound that we're about to drive totally insane. Okay, so basically we could start off right off with VCO1. It's currently set to a triangle waveform at the speed of the modulation, which is the LFO rate. So that is a pretty wide range modulation. That's not just vibrato we're talking about here. Although you could turn it down so it was more like that. And so as you could see, I was playing that by itself, and you could have that happening while you were playing VCO2 straight, or you could set VCO2 to the same functionality, or slightly different so they chorus, or create intervals. And of course, you can also use a square wave. And as is usually the case, the amount defines the interval that is happening between the 2 pitches generated by the square wave. As you can see, the range is pretty wide. So that's certainly a possibility. And the modulation rate, the LFO rate, goes up to quite a high frequency. Which is cool. Next is what's really awesome. So often in basic analog synthesizers, we don't have a way to route the envelopes to the oscillators. And it's a terrible shortcoming because so much can be done when you can modulate pitch in that way. And here we can see that we can direct envelope 1 to VCO1's pitch. Which creates all kinds of unique, usable aspects as well as modulation aspects. It's amazing how many analog synthesizers, great vintage analog synthesizers of the past, are not capable of that functionality. It's a terrible shame because you can create all kinds of really cool things using something like this, in addition to the ways that you can modulate on this particular synthesizer. And then last but certainly not least, we have the ability to modulate the oscillator modulate VCO1 via a square wave from VCO2. That was cool. Basically what was happening was that the envelope that was being applied to the pulse width of VCO2 was creating a scooped envelope effect in the pitch of VCO1 because of this modulation routing. So if we go over to the mixer here, I'm taking the craziness that VCO1 is now currently doing, being modulated by audio range VCO2, and creating an envelope effect due to the envelope 2 that's being directed to its pulse width. This is crazy. But right there, we have the key to so many analog sounds and so much analog fatness to have the stability of an oscillator damaged by modulation from another audio range source. And in this case, we also have a modulation, an accidental modulation happening through the envelope of the pulse width modulation. And I brought the volume of oscillator 1 down enough so then it just becomes an effect, kind of a transient. It's really a cool effect. Really lends some vintage fatness to it that I'm really deeply enjoying. But that's not all you can do. And then you can, it just gets crazy the amount of things that you can do. Since oscillator 2 is modulating oscillator 1, anything that's happening to oscillator 2 is going to screw up oscillator 1. So what happens then if we sync oscillator 2's wave shape to oscillator 1 and then have oscillator 2 modulating oscillator 1's pitch? I have no idea. I don't even know what's going to happen. Let's see what this sounds like. So you can see, okay, so far this synthesizer seemed pretty normal analog synthesizer, but this modulation routing combined with those other functions is where things get crazy. It's also increasing the pitch. Now we're using LFO. But anyway, you can see that the options start to go crazy when you're modulating one oscillator with another oscillator using the various factors that modulate each of those oscillators individually.